What's up, fellas? Today I'm going to be watching The Verge, how we built a $2,000 custom gaming PC. I haven't seen this, but I heard it's pretty bad. Yeah, let's just dive right in.
So a few years ago, TC, or managing editor, built a gaming desktop, but it's kind of out of date, and it's definitely not going to hold up for Battlefield 5. So let's build a new one. You can build a gaming desktop for around $1,000, but I want to go all out, so I spent around $2,000.
Alright, okay, so far it's okay. I mean, it's just introduction, nothing technical yet. But I mean, yeah, you can make a really good desktop computer for $1,000. I'm positive, but like I'm sure this stupid fly. I don't know. I mean, anything from like 500 to 1,500 will do you good. Just depends on the games you want to play.
A PC like this is going to be able to play most games at ultra settings. So, what do you need to build a desktop? Well, of course, first you need a table. Preferably not metal. If it's going to be metal, have an anti-static working surface layered on top of it.
So of course you need a table, right? I don't know if you'd even have a metal table. I don't even know if there's like a full-on metal table such thing. That's like actually bad for your, that would be bad to work on. But I mean yeah, I guess he's right. Don't use a metal table if there's such thing, but yeah, metal. You want to avoid metal and carpet, anything that's static or that can conduct electricity or, you know, fry anything expensive on your board here.
A thermal paste applicator, an Allen wrench.
Okay, Allen wrench. I'm really, yeah, I want to see where this goes.
Some tweezers to tighten up the wires, a Swiss Army knife.
And those are cable ties, not tweezers.
Which hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it. And last but not least, an anti-static bracelet, which is to protect you and the parts. These are the parts you're going to need, but...
That's not an anti-static bracelet, Chief. That ain't grounded. The whole point of an anti-static bracelet is if you were to build up static electricity, it would go through the bracelet and then into the ground. Like, you have to have this plugged in. I don't know where you'd even have it plugged in. I don't use them. But yeah, I'm just sure like the ground pin connects to Earth and it discharge, but this is connecting nowhere and it's gonna do nothing for you.
But more importantly, before we get there, we need to understand what these parts are doing and how they interact with one another. To better understand the parts that make up a desktop, let's try to understand them individually. The processor is like the computer's brain, a base of calculations that control everything the computer does. The motherboard is like the foundation, serving as a main structure for all other parts to be added to. It also allows the other parts to communicate with one another, which also makes it kind of like a nervous system. Graphics cards are responsible for rendering and processing visuals into what you see on screen. Our PC's power supply is of course channeling electricity, in that it adjusts and provides the right amount of energy to keep it running. Last but not least, RAM, or random access memory, and your hard drive are good examples of short-term and long-term memory, respectively. If you want to better understand what kind of computer to build, then first figure out what you want to use it for. A gamer might care more about a graphics card than, say, a video editor who might want extra RAM to assist with editing large files. If you're building a budget build for video streaming, say under $1,000, you want to focus on parts, like a Core i5 or Core i3 processor, that require less energy. They'll be less powerful, but then you'll be able to scale back the cost of several other parts. And if you need help choosing the right parts for your build, there are sites like PCPartPicker.com that help show presets for which parts fit together, which sort of part conflicts you might have, and where to find deals on new parts. We have a lot.
That wasn't bad. That was pretty good understanding actually. Or pretty good way to lay out terms, like especially like RAM, hard drive, short-term and long-term memory. That might be the only thing we like in this video.
A lot of boxes and a lot of PC parts, so it's best if you unbox them, isolate the parts that you really need, place items
he tore that
into the case, and make sure that they all fit, and then start working. And now we're really going to start building by adding the motherboard in. Some notes about installing motherboards: they're really delicate, you should be really careful with them. And screw in with confidence, but also don't screw in too hard, otherwise you could crack the board. I chose Asus's Z370 motherboard for two main reasons. One, it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also it has support for NVMe SSDs, meaning you can get really fast SSDs that are really easy to install. Pay close attention to the brace that goes at the back.
Brace, that's a term. I've never heard that. Also, another thing, I don't think you should be putting in the motherboard right away. Personally, the thing I'd first put into the case would be the power supply, so you can actually get the cables routed through the back and through, like, there's even holes under the motherboard or near the sides that you can actually use. I'm sure he's gonna have a fun time cable managing if he even does that. Yeah. Brace. That also. Yeah, I don't know. Also, before I'd put the motherboard in, I'd try to put CPU on that. I mean, CPU and a cooler. I've worked in my brother's PC, actually. It's a small PC, and I had to exchange the cooler, and I didn't want to take out the whole motherboard, but it was just a pain to get my screwdriver in there to actually unscrew the CPU cooler
Of the computer, you always have.
So that's why I would put the CPU and the cooler on first, and then put that all in the system at once.
To make sure that you really hammer it in, because there's no screw, it really just has to go outside of the case and clasp onto the frame.
Clasp. Nice. Clasp.
And this is very important because otherwise you can't align the motherboard correctly with the holes. We're just going to start installing all 8 screws.
Okay.
So next we're going to install the RAM on the motherboard. I chose Corsair's 16GB Vengeance LED RAM for two main reasons.
So he has 2 sticks of 8, I assume. Or, by the way he's saying it, so I'm guessing he has 16GB kit. That's what it is. The proper term, I'm not trying to be a grammar Nazi or whatever. I don't know. 2 sticks of 8. Or, if we're totally wrong here, it could be 2 sticks of 16. I don't know. Just the wording is confusing here.
One, it has LEDs, and we do like lights in our gaming desktops.
We do like lights.
Secondly, it's pretty fast RAM. It's 2,666 megahertz, I believe. So it's pretty fast, and this motherboard supports that speed.
2,666 megahertz. That ain't fast. Not for DDR4. I mean, I'm running 3,200 megahertz right here for DDR4 RAM. Yeah. I wonder where it even... Yeah, I don't know.
Which is most important.
Just continue.
Open the slots first, and just aligning the stick with the middle of the strip,
You
not
opened
with
4
the end,
slots.
and just lining that up with the logo. So once you hear that solid clasp and you don't see the gold connector
He loves using the word clasp. Love it. I think it's more of a click.
on the side anymore, that's when you know the RAM is in. Step 3, we're going to install the hard drive.
Wait.
Side anymore,
He only put in
that's when you
one
know the RAM is
stick.
in. Step 3, we're going to install the hard drive, or in this case, the NVMe.
Oh no, he put in both. So out of the 4 slots, he put them together. So normally for most motherboards it goes with 4 slots. So there's A1, B1, A2, B2. You want to get you want to have a space in between. So again, it's A1, B1, A2, B2. You want to have both of the A slots filled first. So A1 and A2. So there should be a space in between the 2 RAM. He definitely put it in A2 and B1 here. And I mean, on a lot of motherboards, I don't know, it works a lot better because I don't know how to explain this, but if you have 2 in the same channel, so both the A channels, like dual memory channels, dual memory slots, that if you do both the same, like he should have here, it allows them to run parallel with each other. and overall it might be faster, especially on Ryzen CPUs, especially. So this maybe, depending on whatever he puts in for the processor, this could like make it or break it for RAM speeds.
NVMe SSD. I chose this format of solid state drive so that I could input it into the motherboard without having to worry about extra wires or putting it in a separate part of the case and just getting really messy. This is from Kingston, and it's 480 gigabytes, so it's not a lot, but you can always upgrade this and swap it out.
Gigabytes?
And it's 480 gigabytes, so
480 gigabytes. Okay.
So it's not a lot, but you can always upgrade this. And
it says it's not a lot, but I mean, for a solid state drive, I'd say 480 is enough for me, I guess. Like, for the main solid state drive, like, I have 240 in here, and then I just have a 4 terabyte hard drive for like the rest of my games. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's good for a solid state drive. Yeah, especially on NVMe.
And swap it out, and it's only held down by one screw and the latch, so it's really simple and really straightforward. Speed for gaming is important when it comes to a hard drive. You want files to write quickly, and you want games to load quickly.
I don't like the angle that it's at. I think there's supposed to be like a little sticker thing that goes on the back, and it's like little cushioning that actually holds it up against the motherboard so it doesn't touch anything that's not supposed to.
So that's why it's best if you use an SSD.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so step 4, we're going to install the graphics card. I chose PNY's GTX 1080, which is overclocked. And so it's a pretty easy installation. You're just going to find GTX 1080, which is overclocked. And
it's overclocked out of the box. I don't think so. Definitely not.
So it's a pretty easy installation. You're just going to find the gold connectors, and you're going to line this bracket with the back end bracket of your PC case. Now, which lane you choose depends entirely on what other parts you're going to put in the system.
And it also depends on entirely the bandwidth. So the one closest to the CPU, which thank God he put in, that one has like the most bandwidth allowed for the 2 channels there. Yeah, so again, if you would have put it in the other slot, it would have definitely would have been a make it or break it situation.
I'm just going to pick the top one because the SSD is at the bottom and I don't want to cover it. I just think it looks nice. Click down.
It does look nice.
Take your remaining brackets and just put them in the spots that you haven't used. You don't have to screw these in. They get bolted down by the back.
Bolted. I like all the terms that he's using. That does not match up. It's like those people who like use like fancy terms, or like who talk smart or try to talk smart. I mean, yeah, I mean, or he could be just trying to find like different terms. Like if you just say click, okay, click this down, click that down. It could be repetitive, but like, I don't know, he's just not using the right terms. Maybe he's not trying to, I don't know, maybe some script writing thing. They don't want to repeat the word click.
In bracket. And your GPU is installed. Power supply time. I chose Corsair's 850 watt power supply because I need enough headroom for ray tracing GPUs when they come out, and I don't want to have to upgrade it again. So all you have to do is take the brick and make sure that you align it with these little insulating pads so that the power supply doesn't short circuit and come into contact with the rest of the system. So just take it in.
I think it also holds
slide it in nice and easy until you have a snug fit, and then shift it to the back and make sure it's right up against the frame. Now you just take the required screws and you tighten and screw in.
I also can't believe this guy's using a Swiss Army knife for a screwdriver. When's the Allen wrench going to come into play too?
So next step, we're going to install the CPU cooler. In this case, it's going to go on the top end of the case, and we're just going to have the hose hang out for a little while until we install the processor, which is going to come a little later. So always be sure to try to place it in the system first before you install it, because you can see it takes up a lot of space. But in this case, no pun intended, it fits in perfectly, and we're going to start screwing it in. And so there's nothing special about this screwing process. They're just really long screws because they go through the entire frame of the cooler, and they take forever.
You got to be careful with some screws though, like some fan screws. They might actually have to, they might on some radiators. You might have to screw it through a fan first, in order not to puncture the actual radiator. I made that mistake.
So next up, cables. Every power supply is going to come with a big bag of Velcro cables. It's kind of daunting at first, so you always have to find the ones that are going to fit. In this case, you need to match those cables with the correct descriptions on the power supply. Next step is we're connecting the power supply to the motherboard with a 24-pin cable. We're just matching that cable from the motherboard, threading it through the back, and attaching the 24-pin header to the power supply so that we can have one of the connections complete. The next few additions will be for the GPU, for any specific ports that the case has, for any lighting that the
Now, is there any secondary power for the motherboard?
case has, the CPU cooler, anything else really. We're installing
You're at
the CPU, has the CPU cooler,
the CPU cooler, anything else.
Anything else really. We're installing the CPU, the heart of the computer, anything else really. We're installing
I can't read that.
the CPU, the heart of the computer or the brain, depending on how you look at it. So to do this, we're just going to remove the plastic covering that they put on the motherboard.
Thanks for showing us.
We're just going to take this little plastic part out, just toss that out of here. And now we have an exposed CPU holder, or rather slot, on the motherboard.
Socket.
And we're going to use the CPU applicator. This is a special little part that not everyone may get, but this motherboard that we got from ASUS definitely does have. It's called a CPU installation tool. It makes it really useful that we got CPU applicator. This is a special little part that
what's
not
he doing here?
everyone may get, but
what is he doing?
this motherboard
He pressed the CPU.
that we got from ASUS definitely does have. It's called a CPU installation tool. It makes it really useful if you want to install a Core i7 hexa-core CPU. Yeah, we've got one, and it's an 8th generation chip, and it's ready to go, and it supports overclocking. So what having this little installer does for you is it's basically a brace that you can apply to the CPU and light it up with the triangles that you'll see on the bottom left corners. And this will make it easier for us to apply it to the motherboard and then apply thermal paste and then apply a CPU cooler on top.
Okay, so I take back what I said about him trying to avoid repetitive words. Because he just said apply 3 times in a row. I don't think he knows what he's saying. I don't think he read the script.
And we're just gonna...
Here's my theory, right? They gave him a script and instructions on how to do this. And he just kind of like went along with the script. He lied on his resume.
Gonna carefully lean it down into the system and make sure that everything lines up.
Ooh, I didn't like that.
Carefully lean it down into the system and make sure that everything lines up. And
yeah, that wasn't good.
We're gonna clasp down on it.
If you mess up any of the pins on the motherboard, you're screwed.
And we'll be good to go.
Yeah, okay.
So we're about to apply thermal paste to the CPU.
Awesome.
Every CPU...
There's already... This cooler already has thermal paste on here. That's...
Cooler actually comes with a bit of thermal paste already neatly applied in a circle around it.
He knows.
But it's usually not enough.
He doesn't know.
Good, essentially PC building practice to have a little bit extra and layer it on top of the CPU.
Man. What is that method?
Final portion is to add the CPU cooler to the top end of the processor. So you're going to see that there are 4 brackets, or rather screws in here with brackets and holders.
Everything he got some on the thing itself. Oh man. See, this isn't going to get an even coating, for the most part at least. Wow. And then that with thermal paste that's already on there, that's going to be like way too much.
Right here. And they're going to keep the cooler raised off the processor, but it's also going to be close enough to actually physically come in contact with it. Like, basically keep it cool.
Also, I can't help but notice that the things are running right in front of the fans. And I mean, you could always put it over the other side or figure out some other way to do it.
Thumb screw.
I don't know. He looks like he's struggling here.
And just screw them on. So now that our internals are done, we're going to put...
So he only used thumb screws to put it on. No mention of a star-shaped pattern or whatever. I don't know. I do, so I screw them on, and then I use the screwdriver itself to actually make sure it's on there.
Put all the panels back on, which is the top glass, side glass, front glass, and of course the back panel where all this fun stuff is happening.
That's
so we
not
fully built the
glass.
PC, everything's put together, and we
Look at how crooked the graphics card is.
got to the post screen.
Oh my god.
So what's next? The PC, everything's put together, and we got to the post screen.
Oh no.
So what's next? Well, you need a USB flash drive with your Windows installation media on it, and of course a license key. So I plugged that up, installed Windows in a couple of minutes, installed a bunch of drivers, and now we have a fully functioning gaming PC ready to run some
Thanks
games.
for going in detail.
Right now I've got
showing
Arma
us.
3 running at maximum settings, native resolution, which is 1080p HD, and it's running pretty smoothly. Like, I'm averaging 70 and 80 FPS, and this is normally like a very intensive game to run.
Imagine
And it's
settling for that frame rate.
still doing a pretty good job. So right now I'm playing League of Legends. It's one of my favorite games. I'm actually playing against a bot, and I'm distracted, so I'm not actually doing so well. But otherwise, like, this is pretty much what you would see me do on a gaming computer. Test stuff out, and hopefully have really high frame
120
rates like I
frames
am
per
right
second.
now.
That's not hot. Like, for a PC, for $2,000, I can't believe you're settling for a 70 to 80 frames per second for the Arma 3, given that it's ultra settings. But League of Legends, 120 frames per second. Oop.
I'm averaging 120 FPS, and that's only because I've actually locked the game to that frame rate, because I can get
locked frames.
around 300 FPS playing League on maximum settings,
Why don't you show us that?
which is a little bit absurd, and you don't really need that, so I've locked it.
What's the point of showing people your high frames per second when you can't actually... Oh man.
Building a gaming desktop has been a great experience. I'm able to max out a
Not
lot
for
of
me.
my favorite titles, and I'll be able to play a lot of upcoming titles like Battlefield 5
No
and
way.
Cyberpunk 2077 without worrying too much about the parts I have. When ray tracing GPUs come out, for example, I'll be able to upgrade without having to buy a completely new system, and if I have a problem down the line, I can always just swap out a part and have it serviced rather than losing my whole computer. And of course now we also have a computer to test and benchmark games here at The Verge. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you've built a computer before yourself, or how you would spend $2,000 on your own build. I'm really interested in seeing what sort of parts you guys would get.
That's horrible.
So a few years ago,
What's his
TC, our
name?
managing editor,
Stefan. Oh my gosh, people are still crapping on him till this day. Lost my thermal paste applicator. What do I do? Oh. Yeah, he never used the cable ties. Or the Allen wrench. Wow. Yeah. Oh my gosh, people are just crapping on him still. Bad. Alright, thanks for enjoying that with me. I will see you guys later. Hit me with that 15 likes. I'll build a PC just like he did. Yeah, whatever. I'll see you guys later.